Bienvenido chums, and more importantly, 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 be a Newcastle United player. Right, no, sorry, just 2 seconds, I'm going to have to stop that there. Hi everyone, Adam Clery from the present, that's Adam Clery from the past, and I made this video the very first day that we got told that the Marc Guehi thing was as good as done, which if you are a Newcastle fan, you'll know was about 8 billion years ago. So can't be arsed waiting anymore, so we're putting the video out now. It's all still true. Same strengths, same weaknesses, same impact you'll have on the team, same reasons why they want them. It's all still great stuff, but if there are any comments that you hear me make and think, feels about 3 weeks old, him saying that, that's why. And maybe signs now, maybe doesn't. I don't know at this point, but enjoy! Okay, so, and this might be hard to picture given all the injuries last season and how long ago you saw it, but if every single Newcastle player was available to Eddie Howe, this is probably what the starting 11 looks like. Do you remember Nick Pope? Do you remember Sven Botman? What a time to be alive that was. Now it should go without saying that the 2 areas of this team that are most easy to improve upon are a goal-scoring, dangerous, not 𝗕𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 right attacker, and a new right-sided centre-back. And despite my enormous love of 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓, I mean, I'm not blind, am I? Marc Guehi does not just represent a small upgrade in that position, he represents a massive one. But the thing is, if you look purely at the numbers, that's not something that becomes immediately obvious. I'll show you Marc Guehi's, let's say, defensive stats from last season, and we'll compare them to 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓's, and if you are feeling enormously underwhelmed by those green bars and the numbers in front of them, then yeah, you should be. They're not very good. I mean, if you just make a direct comparison between the 2 of them, you wouldn't say there's any particular area there in which Guehi looks better than 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓. And again, if we look at them in possession, you would say 𝗍's actually a much better player than Marc Guehi is. He seems to do more when he's in possession, he carries it forward better, he gets on the ball more, he looks to be a better ball-playing centre-back than his Crystal Palace counterpart. In fact, and theoretically this is the most alarming bit, one of the main things you hear about Marc Guehi's game is his ability to bring the ball out of defence and break the opposition defensive lines, either through carrying it through them directly with excellent dribbling, or playing long, raking, accurate passes into the attackers. And looking at these numbers, which are the best representation of that ability, 𝗍 wipes the floor with him. And this is going to sound weird coming from a guy whose job is largely to show you stats and to tell you why they're actually interesting. This is a very good lesson in why stats can often be quite misleading. What you're actually looking at here is not a comparison between one player who is good at certain things and another who is less good at those things. You are looking at 2 players who play for very different teams. There is a world of difference between what a player is capable of doing and what a player is required to do. Under Eddie Howe, Newcastle are a high possession front foot team who get on the ball and look to push the opposition back into their own half and their own third as much as possible. It means players like 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓, who are comfortable on the ball, see an awful lot of it. Now, Crystal Palace did become that sort of team last season under Oliver Glasner, but Guehi had a long-term injury that saw him miss most of those games. He played the bulk of the front part of the season, where under Roy Hodgson, they were arse. They would sit back, they didn't have an awful lot of the ball, they didn't play particularly expansively when they did have it, so when Marc Guehi was able to get on the ball, his options in front of him were quite limited. And that's what's reflected in those numbers, like the key passes, the through balls, the switches of play, the attempted take-ons. They're lower than 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗓, but they're coming from a position where the opportunity to do them was considerably rarer. But thankfully, the great thing about your eyes is that yes, you can use them to look at stats, but you can also use them to look at actual football being played. And when you do that, it tells a very different story. Statistically, at Crystal Palace, Marc Guehi has been nothing to write home about, but in actual football, which is thankfully where he's going to be playing most of his games for Newcastle, he is exceptional. And one of his greatest strengths is something Newcastle currently do not really have. From that left-sided centre-back position, he has one of the best long diagonal balls in the league. While opportunities to do it were slightly limited, when he did do run in behind from the right side of the attacker and overlap from the fullback, 2 things you see a lot at Newcastle, he's in a position to curl that ball around and play it long in a way that runs it into the channel. Obviously, you're on your left foot, it'll curl around the other way out of play. And it isn't just that he has the ability to do this, it's that he thinks about doing it all the time. You can see here in this example, there are several way better, way safer options available to him, but instead he picks his head up and he finds that pass into the space, and that creates a chance for Palace. But his other main strength is something Newcastle currently have under Fabian Schär. It's just that Marc Guehi is considerably better at doing it. If one of those passes isn't on, but Guehi still thinks he can break a line of attacking pressure or break a press or something like that, he's supremely good with his close control at dribbling past attackers, dribbling past midfielders, and opening up space that way. And that's something that actually is reflected in his numbers. If we go back 2 seasons to where he had the entire campaign under Palace and they were nowhere near as bad as they were in that first half under Hodgson, you can see with his take-ons and his take-on percentage that he's easily one of the best players in the league at doing that. And again, on the eye test alone, he is not one of those defenders that gives you the heebie-jeebies every time he tries to carry it out. Like, that is the technique and the composure of a supremely talented ball carrier. He registered an assist for Crystal Palace last season, which is hardly the definition of putting it on a plate, but in like a very subtle way shows you everything that he's about. You can see he's sort of ventured forward a little bit into the space. He's happy to receive it, but he does so facing his own goal, which for a defender is a bit of a nightmare. There is a man straight up his arse, but he does not panic. He brings that ball in, he controls it, and he rolls that player with all the composure of a dainty South American midfielder. And then again, where are the easy options? He could have laid it off here first time in a panic. He could have played it safe to the defender here, but no, he gets his head up. He thinks, how can I bring this forward? He sees, I think it's 𝗬𝗍, rolls that in for him, and he admittedly does some of the harder work. But I know, I can hear you like, oh, look at you, Adam, you're one of these new age football types who thinks defenders should be judged by how good they are with the ball at the feet instead of how they should be properly judged, which is like how much of an egg and chips heed the ball can they be when necessary. Well, I mean, he's not obviously an egg and chips heed the ball central defender, but that same composure he has on the ball is very important for how he defends. And I'm sorry if you've never heard this analogy before, because if you haven't, I'm going to sound absolutely radio rental, but you know the whole dog and cat central defender partnership thing? Is that ringing any bells? You want one central defender who's a dog and goes and chases the ball and woof woofs and barks, and the other one is a cat who just sits composed on its perch and just nips in when you have? No? Well, okay, to put that in the more technical term, you always want a centre-back who engages the opposition, who looks to challenge for the ball early, who breaks out of position to snuff out danger. But you also need another one who reads the whole situation. Behind them sits a few yards off, and then if the ball does break or it gets past, they are there to sweep that up. And I know I've said sweep, but it's not a sweeper. A sweeper is something different, but it's kind of, they do some sweeping. Well, Marc Guehi is fantastic at that. His ability to read the play around him, to only engage when absolutely necessary, to allow a central defensive partner to get into all kinds of space, get into all kinds of trouble, and then still be there to make sure the whole system is solid. Like, you can look at pretty much any clip you want of him. You so rarely see him diving in. He reads the play superbly, finds himself in the exact right position to be in. He doesn't show players either one way or the other. He gives them nowhere to go, and his ability to win the ball back without leaving his feet is wonderful. Like you can see in this clip, the attacker will think, oh, perfect, I've drawn him close enough to me that I can now zip past either side. But Guehi gets a leg out fantastically, puts that ball away, never looked even remotely worried. And that is part of the reason why Newcastle are happy to spend that much money on him, because in Sven Botman, they have one of the best dog defenders in the Premier League. He loves to rush out, to engage, to win the ball back early, to close down any spaces that the midfield has left. And Guehi, just like Fabian Schär does, reads the play behind him very well. But the difference between Guehi and Schär is the athleticism. Guehi is far quicker across the ground. He's slightly stronger in the tackle. He's another reason why that's a huge upgrade. And I am absolutely not shitting all over Fabian Schär, by the way, unless he asked me to. He's been a fantastic central defender for Newcastle, but we saw last season with Nick Pope's injury and all those huge gaps they were leaving between the midfield and the defence that he hasn't quite got the legs to make these like ecstatic, panicky recovery runs. Guehi is objectively much quicker across the ground than Fabian Schär is, and in my opinion, it's just mine, a slightly better reader of the game. So his positioning and his athleticism are a huge advantage. Again, not something that is even remotely apparent in the underlying numbers, but if you watched Palace last season or the season before, or even England at the Euros, you'll have seen that plenty. So great, that's amazing. If they pull that transfer off, it's going to be brilliant, and they're going to win the league, and everything's going to be all like roses and galaxy caramel forever, isn't it? There are currently, in my head, two fairly major issues to Newcastle signing Marc Guehi, right? One of them, perhaps the most important one, is positional. Now, you may have heard me say it already in the video, one of Marc Guehi's best attributes is he is a left-sided centre-back with a right foot. So that's where a lot of his long passing, a lot of those really excellent balls come from. Like this was his heat map from all of last season. You will see he so rarely ventures onto the right-hand side of the pitch. He does all his work on the ball and off the ball in this left-hand side. But he's coming in to replace 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗓, we all presume. And this is his heat map from last season. Except no, haha, I fooled you. That's actually his heat map from 2 seasons ago when Sven Botman was permanently available to Newcastle United. He was over on the right-hand side because Sven Botman plays on the left. This is Sven Botman's heat map from when he plays for Newcastle because he, being a left-footed centre-back, is a left-sided centre-back. And this feels like it could be an entire video of its own because it's not really something people were talking about until a couple of years ago. Does it really make that much of a difference which side of the central defensive pairing these players play on? And the answer is yes, massively. And the reason for that is that fundamentally you want to be playing on the side where your strong foot is because when you receive the ball, it means when you face into the pitch, you're on your strong foot for playing the ball forward. And the reason why that sentence can be true, and it also be true that Marc Guehi is a left-sided centre-back on his wrong foot and that's what he's really good at, is simply because right-footers are so much more common than left-footers. I think about it this way, if you're coming up through an academy and you're a right-footer, chances are you're going to be in a centre-back pairing or even a 3 with another or 2 other right-footers. You have to learn at some point to play on the left-hand side because otherwise there'd be like 90% of all centre-backs play on one side and only 10% on the other. So on the rare occasion you do get a naturally left-sided centre-back, they have to play on the left-hand side because that's just the best use of them imaginable. Now don't get me wrong, it's not a catastrophe by any stretch of the imagination, it's just something that Marc Guehi's going to have to work on. If the idea is that him and Botman are the preferred centre-back pairing going forward, he'll have to play on the right-hand side, he'll have to reteach his brain how to get on the ball and find those same raking passes from the opposite side of the pitch. And he can absolutely do that. He's young enough to learn, he's talented enough to learn. It's just that muscle memory and pattern repetition are important, and as of yet, he's not really done that. The other issue, and this absolutely is something that's apparent in the data, is he is quite weak in the air. Standing at 6 foot tall, which is exactly the same as me, means he's often targeted by the opposition for long balls into the air. And you saw this for that absolutely awful goal that England conceded at the Euros. They hit a hopeful diagonal into his area, he challenges for it, and he does not win it. Now that's fine, obviously defenders don't win every single ball that comes into their area, but such a known weakness is this that John Stones leaves his position to cover over because he doesn't expect him to win it. And from there, just by targeting that area, Slovakia pull England all the way across the pitch and in the ensuing confusion, get in and score that goal. And if you slow it down, there is another moment in this which is a small weakness in his game. Guehi just fractionally switches off when that ball goes loose. He is occasionally guilty of just forgetting what's around him and focusing on what he can see. Now don't get me wrong, he reads the game in front of him absolutely superbly. It's just sometimes that vision stops here and his brain doesn't fill in the rest. I could make a similar comment about the winning goal in the Euros final, but I don't want to talk about that again, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to talk about that again, so we'll take that point as read. So it is a mixed bag this, albeit one that has very, very delicious treats in it. Like potentially, Marc Guehi is an enormous ceiling raiser for Newcastle. His ability to get on the ball from central defence and bring it out allows Bruno to push further up the pitch, allows the whole defence to play slightly further up the pitch. With Nick Pope back in goal, that's not even a problem. It would make them more attacking, it would make them more incisive. He could be providing those balls through the defence that they sometimes lack in deep positions. It could really, really push Newcastle on a number of levels. But the caveats are that while we know he can do all these things, we're yet to see him do them consistently from that exact position on the pitch. And as stupid as it sounds, like I can hear people watching this video going, if you were paying me £100,000 a week, I would not care which side of the centre-back pairing I was on. And you're right, it's just that it does take a period of adjustment. And also, theoretically, it does make Newcastle, who are very good at both attacking and defending set pieces, slightly less good at that. theoretically. But overall, do I like this transfer? No, I don't. I f***ing love it. Newcastle spending fat cash on an England international centre-back when it's a position they actively need to improve. My pants are off, mate. Pinch me. Anyway, that's all I could think to talk to you about on this one. If you have enjoyed the video, please do let us know in the comments below. Are you excited about this transfer? Are your pants also indeed off? All thoughts, all feelings, all poetry, all verse, all song. Welcome down below. And a very special end of video message to those of you in the Northeast who may be watching this. Me, yours truly, doing the Great North Run in approximately, I don't have a watch on, far too soon. If you follow me on any social media, you will know that I have no knees. My heart is bad. My childhood asthma simply never went away. So it's obviously a terrible idea, but we are trying to raise some money for Mind in the UK, who are a mental health charity who do vital work in this country. It's a cause particularly close to my heart, no pun intended. So any small donation you would be happy making will go so much further than you even realise. They're an awesome thing to be doing it for. And even though it's going to suck for me, I'm doing it not happily, but gladly. Anyway, speaking of social media, you can get me there. I'll put a link in the description for the fundraiser, just in case you have got a couple of quid lying around. The 442 socials are in the corner of the video. And until next time, God, I really hope they've actually made this transfer. Otherwise, what a waste of an afternoon that was, eh? Oh well, fingers crossed. Bye!